welcome to everybody to our first regional conversation on soil health. Wholehearted welcome to all new participants. Some of you have just discovered the series partly through this being about particular systems that are of interest to you. Some of you have been part of our national conversations. Welcome back to those of you as well. We're starting a new component of the conversation on soil health because while there are many insights that have national relevance, there are at least as many insights that can be shared that are quite specific to unique challenges and innovations in specific production systems, diverse climates, diverse soils, and regionally critical resource concerns. And so today we're going to dive into some unique challenges and opportunities as well as some really cool recent innovations in soil health management systems for cotton. And we hope to continue to address regionally specific systems and challenges as we go on with these. So we're really hoping that you will chime in. If this is useful, you want more on cotton, let us know. If you have additional ideas, we'd love to hear about those. We are designing this series for our agency's field staff to gain ideas and experience virtually that can be implemented locally to effectively ramp up soil health activities. So there's a lot of excitement and new passion that continues to grow across the agricultural sector. There are a lot of really incredible examples. You all are doing fantastic things across the country. Innovations, challenging systems, increased soil health adoption and impact is happening, and it's happening differently in some places. And so we hope to continue these conversations so that they can continue to inspire networking between states, to share some of those successes and lessons, and really help us implement some of these new technologies, these approaches that we're coming up with, some of the agency's program flexibilities that some folks are leading on. There are just so many opportunities, and we hope that these conversations help with that. So as we continue this series, please do get in touch to share your ideas for upcoming broadcasts. If you have particular questions, challenges, key soil health topics, and systems that you'd like us to address, please do let us know. If you're interested in sharing your expertise, please do volunteer. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to facilitate a discussion, you've got some speakers in mind, if you've got particular insights, successes, solutions, systems that you know are working in your area that everybody should hear about, please do let us know. We'd love to welcome everybody on this journey. We'd love to have everybody continue to learn from each other. So let's keep on sharing. Our conversational series is available on our agency YouTube channel, so you can review those there. We also make them available through the NRCS Soil Health team on MS Teams, and so any USDA account holders, you can see, I think Brandon may have already put in the chat, how to join that team if you're not yet a member. We will continue this series the third Thursday of each month from 1 to 2:30 Eastern Time. So the next national conversation will air on January 21st next year, and we will continue to record these sessions so that we can share them both internally and externally. So with that, let's get today's session on the way. Cotton producers Matt Griggs and Adam Chappell, as well as UT Extension's Dr. Tyson Raper, will share their experience managing cotton systems for improved soil health today, and we hope that you find some technical pointers and inspirational insights in this. Matthew Denton, our Acting Soil Health Division Regional Soil Health Specialist, will moderate for us today, and you can use the chat to ask questions at any point during the presentation or raise your hand if you'd like to verbally ask a question or chime in during the discussion. So we hope you enjoy the conversation, and with that, Matthew, colleagues, take it away. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Bianca. My name is Matthew Denton. I am an area resource conservationist in West Tennessee and also currently serving collaterally with the Soil Health Division, as Bianca mentioned. So I'm glad to be here. Season's greetings, everyone. We have a great slate of speakers for you today. I'd like to introduce our presenters, our panelists today. First, we have Matt Griggs. Matt comes to us from Tennessee. He's a fifth-generation farmer. He took over in 2005 when his father suddenly passed away. Since 2005, Matt has increased his planted acres from 900 to 2,000 acres where he produces corn, cotton, soybeans, and wheat. Matt graduated from UT Martin in 2002 with a degree in plant and soil science, and he started experimenting with cover crops in 2011, went large scale in 2014 and began planting green in 2015. Matt has numerous recognitions. Some recent ones include the 2017 American Soybean Association Conservation Legacy Award for the South region. Also in 2017, he was recognized as the Tennessee Conservation Farmer of the Year, and recently in 2020, he received the High Cotton Award. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Tyson Raper. He is the Pettigrew Cotton Specialist for the University of Tennessee. Dr. Raper completed his PhD at the University of Arkansas. He received his MS at Mississippi State University and received his undergrad at Auburn University. During his time at the University of Tennessee, he has established a strong working relationship with the following folks: agents, producers, consultants, scouts, students, and scientists within and outside of the Mid-South. Dr. Raper has recently been honored as the 2019 Cotton Specialist of the Year award winner and the 2020 Cotton Researcher of the Year. He currently serves as the president of the Extension Cotton Specialist Working Group. And last but not least, we have Adam Chappell from Arkansas, Cotton Plant, Arkansas. Ironically, I thought that was appropriate. He's a fourth-generation grower who produces cotton, corn, soybeans, and rice on 9,000 acres. And he has been working officially on the farm since 2005. He and his brother Seth took a leap of faith in 2010 and changed the family farm over to using cover crops for weed control instead of using tillage and herbicide at a high level. They still have competitive yields, but they have reduced their input cost by 50 to 60%, and you'll hear more about that here in a few minutes. He grows several cover crops, including cereal rye, black oats, daikon radish, vetch, peas, and clovers on about 8,000 of those acres. They also utilize a no-till system now. He made a drastic change when he introduced livestock into the cropping mix. They started with just 40 head of cull cows and have now expanded that to increase the number of head of cattle and include sheep into the rotation. He has played a major role in founding the Arkansas Soil Health Alliance in 2016, a nonprofit closely aligned with NRCS and the University of Arkansas Extension. Adam is frequently featured on panel discussions and regularly participates in speaking engagements across the region, as I've learned from viewing his multitude of YouTube videos. So we're glad to have all three of these folks with us today, and we look forward to hearing from them. And Matt, if you'll get us started here.
All right, thank you, Matthew. Before I get started, I just want to give you a little background about why I got started in soil health. There's been two distinct events in my short farming career that showed me that the traditional way of doing things with no-till just wasn't going to be sustainable long term. One was the drought of 2007. That year, we had the worst drought in like 50 or 60 years. We actually wound up losing $100,000 that year from the start to the end. I knew another year like that could definitely potentially put us out of business and end 5 generations of farming here. The second event was the advent of Roundup-resistant pigweed. It's become a huge problem in our area, and we started losing chemistries at an alarming rate that would control pigweed. So I knew that I needed to research and look into other methods that would help us control these pigweeds. So in all that research, I knew that putting carbon into the soil and providing cultural methods to block sunlight from the soil was going to be a big part of the answer to our problems. And cover crops naturally fit. The cover crops naturally fit both things. Here you see some pictures right here of this is what we plant cotton into. All of these pictures represent approximately around 33 to 35,000 pounds of biomass per acre of wet biomass. I think that translates to about 7,000 to 8,000 pounds of dry biomass per acre. But by the time we start planting around the 10th of May or so, this is what our cover crops have become. We We typically try to plant our cover crops right behind the harvesting machine the previous fall, and for cotton, our cotton always follows our corn, so our cover crops behind our corn typically get planted the first 2 or 3 weeks of September, and by next May, this is what they can turn into. Now, you can imagine getting a planter through this is not easy, and it took us a few years of experimenting with a bunch of different types of systems to find something that would work for us. It was a huge struggle for us to figure out how to plant into this stuff. But the question on this slide is how do we turn all of this, which we know is good, into this, which is you're looking at a successful cotton crop right there. The picture on the right is young cotton growing in that thick biomass. You've got a good stand, no weeds, and then the pictures on the left is a very good cotton crop. The bottom left picture with a cotton picker in it was one we took last year. It averaged 1,500 pounds of cotton per acre, which for us in our area is a tremendous yield. It might not be that tremendous in other areas of the country, but for us, it's tremendous. A very good average for us is typically considered around 1,200 pounds per acre. So to get 1,500 pounds per acre is awesome. And a lot of it is due to our work with cover crops and improving the soil health. There are several principles that are very key to successfully growing cotton into cover crops. Number one, you got to get the seed in the ground, and that's perhaps the hardest thing to do is to get the actual seed into the soil through all that cover crop. And I found several different ways that work. The aftermarket companies are coming out with row cleaners that won't wrap up or don't have a tendency to wrap up in cover crops. I've modified, one of my earliest things I did was modify my row cleaners to work in cover crops, which you see in the top right-hand corner there. I made some custom plates out of some old disc openers that go on the backside of my row cleaners to keep them from wrapping up. And then another trick to getting the seed in the ground is to actually plant deeper. Well, with that kind of level of biomass there, you don't have to worry about the soil crusting over. And typically with cotton, we try to plant shallow because we want to get the seed up as quickly as possible before we get a hard pack and rain, which can cause the soil to crust over. The cover crops, you don't have that problem. The soil is not going to crust. Number two there, and this is where it really took off for us, where we had absolutely no problems planting drip kill, which you see in the top left picture. And I'll cover more of this. I'll touch more on this in a later slide. The second principle is to get the cover crop on the ground. To get the full benefits of cover crops, it needs to be laying flat on the ground. Any cover crops that's standing up in the air after termination, it's really not helping you that much. But if you can get it down on the ground, you're shading the soil, you're minimizing any kind of evaporation from the soil. You're keeping the soil temperatures cooler during the summer, and utilizing a roller crimper or other methods. My preferred method is the roller crimper to roll down the crop is very key. And the third principles, and this was perhaps one of the hardest things to learn. When I know every spring, if a farmer sees his neighbor hauling his planter down the road, he wants to go to the field and plant too. But when you're dealing with this level of biomass, you got to wait for the right conditions. It doesn't matter what the calendar is. If the conditions are not right, you're setting yourself up for failure. Cover crops will, at least in the first few years when you're transitioning from a conventional till or no-till into cover crops, the first couple of years, any kind of weather problems you have will be magnified by the cover crops, being cool and damp with some pathogens and other stuff. As you keep on with this system, some of those factors don't become quite as bad because the soil has conditioned itself. But I can't stress enough, wait for the right conditions with a good forecast following planting to ensure your success. If the conditions aren't right, keep your planter in the shed. On this slide, I'm going to talk about row cleaners. The most important part of your planter when dealing in high biomass cover crops is actually in front of the disc openers. I'm a firm believer that to successfully cut through that residue, you need some sort of tool in front of the disc openers to clear a path. Because, I mean, you're dealing with several inches of biomass there after it's been rolled down, and the standard disc openers just have a hard time of cutting through that residue and accurately placing seed in the soil without any interference from the cover crop. We just bought a new planter last winter, and we run it for 1 year, and I actually ordered that planter with the Martin razor wheels. You see in the bottom left-hand picture there, that's us planting with the Martin razor wheels, and I've been really happy with them. I've had absolutely no problem wrapping with them whatsoever, and they do a reasonably well job of clearing a path in thick biomass. Top left-hand corner are the solid plates that I made for my old planter with the factory Kinsey floating row cleaners. Before I made those plates, the first year I tried to plant green with my planter set up just like it was for no-till. I think I made about 15 feet in the field, and everything was locked up tight on my planter. And it was the most frustrating experience that first year in 2015 of trying to plant green. I mean, it took us about 10 days to plant 500 acres of cotton. I mean, we were taking things off the planter, putting things on the planter, adjusting this, adjusting that, just trying to find some combination that worked. And ultimately, we really didn't. And our cotton stand that year really suffered. I know it definitely hurt yield some. And the second year is when I came up with this design for the plates. And basically, we just took some old disc openers we had in a scrap iron pile and a plasma torch, cut them down to the right diameter, and drilled some holes to bolt them up, and they work great. That picture on the very right is kind of the furrow that those row cleaners opened up in that thick biomass, and we ran those for quite a few years until we started strip spraying, and then. Another aftermarket company is you got the Dawn ZRX Plus. I know one of my neighbors has tried that. They do a good job of clearing, but in the rolling ground that we have, they don't seem to work that well. They have a tendency to dig and other stuff. But I do know it is a planter attachment option for some people, but I think they work better in flat ground. This right here is the cat's meow for us. Once we switched to this system right here, I mean, planting got easy again. There was no problem whatsoever. And I know most everybody has heard of strip till. Well, I mean, obviously, I don't want to do any tillage whatsoever. So we came up with this strip kill system to where we utilize our hooded sprayer. And instead of spraying underneath the hoods like the hooded sprayer is designed to, we rigged up some drop nozzles in between the hoods and spray in between the hoods and let the hoods protect the cover crop. And what this does, this kills anywhere from an 8 to 10 inch wide band through the field. We'll typically do this around middle to latter part of March. And all we use is Roundup. And we log all of our guidance lines with RTK. So when it comes time to plant, all we have to do is transfer those guidance lines from the tractor that we sprayed with to the tractor that's hooked up to the planter. You punch a button and you can plant right into those strips, and just like you're seeing in the pictures. And you're getting the best of both worlds with this. You're getting the ease of planting into no-till, but then you're also getting the benefits of all the biomass with weed control and building organic matter and everything else. So we've been doing this 3 years now, and we've had fantastic cotton stands. Planting has been super easy, super fast. It's really gotten rid of a lot of the problems that we had the first few years of planting green. Roller crimpers, like I said earlier, they're absolutely crucial to maximizing the benefits. If you don't use a roller crimper, you're still going to see plenty of benefits from cover crops, but to get I'm investing anywhere from $35 to $45 an acre in cover crops. I want to get every bit of that dollar benefit out of them that I can. If you don't use a roller cripper, you're still going to get plenty of benefits, but if you get the cover crop on the ground flat, you're going to get so many more benefits. And the biggest benefit of getting the cover crop on the ground is weed control. I found that a good, thick, consistent stand of cover crop is by far the best residual that I can have. It beats any of the other chemicals that we can use. And it does that by blocking sunlight from reaching the soil. And like I said earlier, Palmer amaranth it drives probably 90% of the management decisions we make here in West Tennessee. And the only way Palmer amaranth can germinate is if sunlight can reach the ground. If there's no sunlight reaching the ground, Palmer amaranth will not germinate. Once it germinates, it becomes very hard to kill, so the best way to prevent any weed infestations in your field is to keep it from actually germinating. Now, these pictures right here is a field of soybeans, and you can see right there mixed in with the soybeans in the drill is a very thick carpet of Palmer amaranth, young Palmer amaranth. And to give you the backstory on this field right here, this was the first year that we planted green. We actually planted cotton around the 15th of May on this field, and like I said, we weren't set up to plant cotton. We had a poor cotton stand, and I actually had to terminate this field. There just wasn't enough cotton there to justify keeping it. And we went back about the end of June and planted soybeans in there, and of course we used our row cleaners to move the residue out of the way. If you look in those pictures, the only place you've got pigweeds germinating is right there in the drill where the row cleaners moved the residue out of the way. In the middles were clean. And that's not due to any herbicide. That's strictly due to the cover crop keeping sunlight from reaching the soil and keeping the pigweeds from germinating. So when I saw this out in the fields, I mean, it was an eye-opener to me. It didn't matter how much of a difficulty I had planting into this stuff going forward. If I could find something that would control pigweeds this well, I knew that I was very close to solving one of the main problems that drove me to go in this direction to begin with. Now going into fertility, we found that with a good thick stand of cover crops with some legumes mixed in, that we can actually cut our nitrogen use in cotton by half and not suffer any kind of yield effects whatsoever. In corn and possibly other crops, it's not the same, but for cotton, nitrogen is not a huge requirement. Or for cotton, in cotton, nitrogen is not a huge requirement. So we've been able to cut our fertilizer, the nitrogen use from about 80 pounds per acre down to 40 pounds per acre, and still maintain our yields and not show any kind of deficiencies in our tissue test. But I think it was around 2014 or 2015, I started some long-term test plots in conjunction with Matthew and the NRCS. So we call it our adaptive management plots. And what we're doing is we're trying to study the effects, the differences between no-till and then two different scenarios of cover cropping system utilizing high biomass cover crops. And we've done a lot of tests over the years just studying the difference, and most of the rest of my slides are going to reference these plots right here. But anyway, they're 38 feet wide plots. They're replicated 4 times each. So we're getting some real good data off of it. But I believe this was 2017 when I took these tissue tests. We had cotton on those plots right there, and what we did is we marked 1 point in a no-till plot, and then 1 point in the cover crop right next to it. The distance between these two plots was about 40 feet in the field. And what we did is we took weekly tissue tests from these points all the way throughout the season, starting at 45 days after planting and continuing until the time that the bowl started opening. And what we noticed is that the nutrient concentration in the cover crop plots was greater than the neighboring no-till plots in all except for 3 nutrients, which would be sulfur, calcium, and manganese. But your major nutrients, your nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, all of those nutrients consistently tested higher in the cover crop plot as compared to the no-till plot. And the fertility programs, everything was the exact same. And like I said, there was only 40 feet of difference between these two plots. So what we determined is happening is we're getting greater fertilizer efficiency or fertilizer use efficiency whenever you add cover crops to the mix. You know, probably has a lot to do with what's going on with feeding the microbes in the soil and other factors like that. A couple years ago, I charted our historical cotton yields from as far back as I could track was 1977, and then all the way up to this year. As you can see, you know, over the decades, there's a gradual trend upwards, but there's a whole lot of variation from year to year. And then if you look at 2015, where the blue line was, that was the first year where we started planting green. And you know, the first 2 years was kind of rough as we were trying to figure out ways to get the seed in the ground and get a good stand of cotton. But after we got that figured out, and then when we started utilizing strip spraying, you can see there was a definite upward trend in cotton yields. And then you get to 2020. Just to give you a disclaimer on 2020, on the majority of my farms, we went about 5 weeks with no rain on our farms. It was this perhaps the driest summer we've had since 2012. So in my area, we did not have ideal growing conditions. There was plenty of places just north of us and just south of us and just east and west of us that got plenty of rain, but for whatever reason, in my small location, we were pretty much a black hole for rain for most of July and part of August there. But the big thing I'm taking away from this graph is you just don't see the yield fluctuations, the variability from year to year. You got about a 200-pound range there between my highest yields and my lowest yield for a 5-year period. So, you know, and that's one thing I want to count on going into the year. I want to be able to count on consistent yields. And I believe cover crops is a big reason to where our yields are being a lot more consistent from field to field and year to year. And we're not just seeing it just in cotton. We're also seeing it in corn and soybeans. These pictures right here are worth 1,000 words. This is a picture of my adaptive management plots. Again, 2017 when we had cotton growing on those plots. And the top right-hand picture is a picture of the no-till plot. Then all of this was after an 1.5 inch rainfall over about a 45-minute period, I believe. Top right is a no-till plot. The top left picture is a picture of the cover crop plot right next to it. And I've had so many people say, you know, it's not the same field, it's not the same day, yada, yada, yada. The bottom picture is where those plots meet. On the right is cover crop, on the left is no-till. And I mean, it speaks volumes right there. You got, there's a slight slope from on that field. I'm standing at the bottom of the slope, and all that water on the left is running downhill towards me, and right behind me there's a creek. It's running in that creek where it's not going to benefit me one bit. Yeah, we got the rainfall, but we didn't get it in the soil to where we could utilize it. Whereas on the right, all that water is going in the ground to where I can to where I can use it. We did some water infiltration tests earlier that year on these two exact plots. I believe we did it in late March or early April before I planted the crop. The soil was at field capacity at that time. For the first inch of water went in on the no-till at a rate of 2 inches per hour, which is standard for no-till in West Tennessee. On the cover crop right next to it, the first inch went in at a rate of 62 inches per hour. My math's not that good. I don't know what percentage increase that is, but it's huge. The second inch on the no-till, we couldn't even wait around long enough to watch it infiltrate. After about 45 minutes, I don't even think half of it had infiltrated yet. But for the cover crop right beside it, the second inch was infiltrated at a rate of 12 inches per hour. That pretty much told me whatever rainfall we get in the summer, which typically comes hard and quick, I'll be able to infiltrate most of it into the soil and be able to utilize it going forward. Whereas no-till, we get an inch rain, we might only get 2/10 infiltrated in the soil and the rest of it washes off. going back to these same plots, this was last year's data. I had a company install some soil moisture probes on those two plots. And when you're reading a soil moisture probe, on that graph, the higher the number on the left, the drier the soil is. The lower number, like when you get to zero, the zero is completely saturated soil. So the higher the number goes, the drier it is. The blue bar or the blue line is the no-till plot, and the orange line is the cover crop plot right beside it. Like I said, we're talking about 40 feet worth of difference. And as you can tell, they both started off about the same at planting. The soil was close to field capacity, and then as the crop took off, the gap between the two widened. You were losing early on in the season. You were losing a lot more water to evaporation that you weren't losing in the cover crop. And then if you look at where the line starts taking a downturn, that's every place where we had a rain event. And you can clearly tell that whenever we had a rain event, the cover crop plot infiltrated and stored far more water than what the no-till plot did. And to me, that was pretty eye-opening data right there, because typically, most years, water holding capacity in our soils is our limiting factor on yields. Well, that pretty much concludes all the information I've got. I just briefly touched on a lot of things today. I do have a video on our YouTube channel of how to plant into cover crops. It's about 30 minutes long, and it goes into a lot better detail exactly the things we do to our planter and strategies that we use to be able to successfully plant into high biomass cover crops. So if you're looking for a little bit more in detail coverage of that topic, I encourage you to go look it up and watch it, and feel free to share it with whoever you want to.
Matt, we had one from the chat, and it says, what about weed pressure in the strip kill row?
Surprisingly, I have not noticed increased weed pressure in the row where we strip killed. Now, because pigweed is such a problem, we don't rely 100% on cover crops for our weed control. We do apply some residual herbicides. Brake herbicide is one that we're really fond of on suppressing pigweeds, and we spray that at planting, and perhaps the brake herbicide is enough to control weeds in the strip until the cotton has grown enough to shade the row out. But no, we have not really noticed any extra weed control or any extra weed emergence problems in the strip that we kill.
Matt, we'll have time for one more question, and it is, how do you seed your covers?
My preferred method is a drill right behind the combine. We have done quite a bit of aerial seeding. It's been hit or miss on aerial seeding depending on how much residue you have on the ground, the kind of weather that you have. I don't like aerial seeding because they cost so much more. The airplane charges, $10, $11 an acre. You got to put out at least 25% more seed. So weed control is one of the biggest benefits that we need. And with aerial seeding, most likely you're not going to get a consistent enough stand to be able to suppress weeds all across the field. Whereas if you drill the cover crop behind the harvesting machine, most likely you're going to get a good consistent stand that you can depend on for weed control.
Excellent. Well, this presentation will fall nicely right behind Matt Griggs. I want to really focus in on some of the challenges that we've had in Tennessee, really why they're kind of unique to cotton production within the region. I'll talk a little bit about my effort addressing some of these issues, and then what our role really in the grand scheme of things, what it is. So, all right, so I want to start with a little background on cotton production. And I know that many of you are within the region, so you can ignore this. But for those that are outside of the region, I think it's very important to note we're located, myself, Matt Griggs, Adam Chappell, we really represent the northern edge of the cotton belt. We are going to be right there on the west end of Tennessee. the northeast corner of Arkansas. Our region is fairly, I would say, overall humid and typically wet when we are in the spring, May, even into June. I've got a rainfall graph on the next image. Matt, if you want to go ahead and advance, yeah, great. We've got from Arkansas down to Louisiana over to North Carolina and even up into Virginia, we represent about 4 million acres every year. Again, we're on the northern edge of the belt in Tennessee and in northeast Arkansas. And because of that, we typically grow early or early mid-maturing varieties. We don't see cotton creep into corn states north of us, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, not because they don't want to grow it, it's because they really can't. They don't have the heat units required to mature out the crop. We talk about in cotton a DD 60 for modeling growth, a base temperature of 60 degrees Fahrenheit. I've actually graphed here average minimum temperature in Jackson, Tennessee, captured from 1980 to 2010. And then above, I've got the average rainfall from 1980 to 2010. I want to start with minimum temperature, and I drew a baseline of 55 degrees Fahrenheit. This is, again, minimum temperature. And you can see we really don't start climbing above 55 degrees as minimum temperature until the 1st of May. And from the 1st of May until October 1st, that really is the only window we have. If we do anything to this window to shorten it, if we were to integrate a cover crop that would potentially cool soil and push our plant date back, we could potentially be looking at leaving some heat units on the table, right? Delaying planting and not capturing all of the heat units that might be available. I think it's also important to think about this curve when you think about cover crop growth too. We see a lot of growth late spring for us along the northern edge of the belt. So there's a question here about termination with a roller crimper. We know, based on some of the data that we've collected, we need adequate biomass for that crimper to be effective. If you're not close to the milk stage with cereal rye, for example, a lot of times you'll see that cover crop spring back up. One of the reasons that Matt Griggs is so successful in termination with that roller crimper is he's willing to push that window back a little bit. So for us in our research, if we're trying to terminate that cover crop early April in a normal year, a lot of times we'll need that roller crimper plus an herbicide spray. But that's an aside. I'll share some more about that here in a minute. I want to look at that upper panel as well. When we look at average rainfall, one of the challenges with cover crops in this humid region, particularly in, I would say, Tennessee and Arkansas, our soils do not allow water to infiltrate as quickly as you might see in the southeast. We're talking about typically silt loam and in areas quite a bit of clay content. A lot of rainfall, too wet is one of our big issues at planting in that May window. And you can see from our average rainfall data that's been collected, that May timeframe represents one of the wettest periods of the year. Now, to Matt Griggs' point, and I'll share a little data on this here in a minute, but I think the main benefit for us in Tennessee, we are a predominantly dry land state in Tennessee. If we can integrate a cover crop, we can increase water infiltration and increase water holding capacity through our effective flowering window. And that would represent late July, August, September. And this is where we really see significant increases in yield associated with a cover crop in the system. Just being able to take the water in and retain it. Matt's images do far better than any graph that I will share today. But our soil water infiltration rate, if we have a pivot in West Tennessee, we're typically applying either at or less than 0.3 inches of water per turn. And the reason for that is that water simply runs off the landscape very, very quickly. You put a cover crop on there, and as Matt mentioned, all of a sudden now we're moving water into the profile and we're retaining it. Our data would indicate increases in excess of 8% volumetric water content. And from a plant available water standpoint, for those that can do that conversion quickly in your head on the silt loam, we're somewhere between 20 to 30% increase in plant available water associated with simply having some level of cover crop residue on the soil surface. So that's really where we see the benefit in Tennessee cotton. So the main reasons that we see stands fail in Tennessee from the overall acreage standpoint, I would say number one and number two, chilling injury and saturated soil conditions. Usually these go hand in hand. I included an image of a bedded field because this would be the predominant cultural practice for the Delta, and in some areas of Tennessee, bottom acres. The reasons for this are clear. We create a physical structure that moves water down away from the young seedling, and it allows that seed bed to warm up quicker. And I think it's important to keep that in mind when we try to understand why we have some real challenges in cotton production. When we start, let's just say we move from this bedded scenario to no-till, which we're very fortunate that most of our acres in Tennessee are no-till now. No-till, we're going to see more water held around that seedling, and we're going to see lower soil temperatures in that planting window. Now you add, as we typically refer to it, a blanket with a cover crop across that no-till soil surface, and we have really increased the amount of water that's held around that seedling and, again, reduced the temperature of the soil around that seedling. So we've got some real issues that have to be absolutely addressed, where our neighbors to the south may not have these issues. It's particularly challenging for us here in Tennessee. All right, so Matt's covered a lot of these. I will touch very, very quickly on a few. The good, in my opinion, number one is increase in water holding capacity and infiltration rates. I stated that case in the previous slide. We also see significant increase in weed suppression. As Matt Griggs indicated, this is not an elimination of herbicides in the system. For us, it has been you apply a solid residual system in addition to your cover crop. We typically can reduce at least one post-application in the system of an herbicide. Still typically need a post, but again, you're talking about eliminating a couple of different herbicide applications in season, some real benefits there from a managing resistance standpoint. We do see buffered soil temperatures, and that's important for us late in the year. When we get into July and August, that increases the amount of nutrients we can continue to uptake as opposed to seeing drastic spikes in soil temperatures that can definitely cause stress in the plant. We do see a reduction in erosion and nutrient leaching. I would say we also see an increase in effective rooting depth, and I know that a lot of data Bill Robertson has tried to collect over in Arkansas on that. I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing some of these shifts in nutrient concentrations in cover cropped acres as opposed to no-till. We simply have more soil to work with when we're incorporating a cover crop. And we see some altered insect populations. We typically see reduced thrips injury in cotton production. But the bad, unfortunately, they are fairly numerous. Residue at planting, cooler temperatures at planting, excessive soil moisture at planting, allelopathy, and this is something that we've had an opportunity to tackle a little bit in Tennessee. Those same allelopathic chemicals that negatively impact those developing weeds also can impact your cotton. And so that's something to consider. One of the reasons that Matt's strip termination, in my opinion, works so well is we're eliminating that allelopathic impact right there around that developing cotton seedling. We see early season nutrient immobilization. That's not been a big issue for us in cotton, more so I would say in corn. And we've also seen some altered insect populations. And I don't have any pictures here, but three-cornered alfalfa hopper is a pest that, quite frankly, some of my cotton consultants around were shocked when they started seeing the injury in cotton. This is a pest that's not typically a cotton pest. It would be more of an issue in soybeans. But when we have a legume cover crop and we don't address three-cornered alfalfa hopper populations in that cover crop, we can see some negative impacts on cotton stands and loss of stands in some scenarios. All of these that we've highlighted in red, again, unfortunately hit us in that very important time frame of cotton establishment, really the 1st of May. So my role in University of Tennessee's involvement, I started in 2014 here, had an opportunity to participate in a couple of NRCS events. And I would say for those field staff that are interested in trying to develop momentum around a program like this, take note. Brad Denton and Matthew Denton have done a phenomenal job of building a team of producers in the area. They're willing to take good news and bad news and listen to each other, allow the producers to carry the conversation, and address issues that they've seen and solutions. And Matt Griggs is one of those individuals that's been involved in that process. He's been more than willing to share what's worked well for him and really led others in the region in addressing some of their issues. I have the luxury of being able to participate in that team occasionally and listen to some of the conversations. Tremendous momentum in West Tennessee around this cover crop integration and really trying to tackle some of these issues, because I think we all understand how significant, how impactful a proper integration could be, how that could really, really alter, increase the sustainability of the system overall. I joined the team for two main reasons. One, to try to address some of these issues in my research program, capture some data surrounding management activities, and two, communicate that to others within the region. So I have a decent platform here as the Extension Cotton Specialist. I visit all the major cotton producing counties. We have University of Tennessee has an agent in every county in Tennessee, and so we typically have production meetings, also serve regionally and nationally on several different meeting platforms. So we want to be able to communicate our successes and hopefully eliminate some of the negative experiences that a few had in recent years in integrating cover crops into the cotton production system. My main research objectives were termination timing of the cover crop, termination method of the cover crop, planter setup, and then a little bit on allelopathy, which I won't be sharing today. I'm going to cover some of this data very, very quickly. I hope we can have some conversation around some of these results. And again, Matt Griggs has shared a lot of these same findings independently in his presentation. So thanks to NRCS and Cotton Incorporated, we were able to commit a considerable amount of our time in the past 3 or 4 years on several large on-farm trials. We got about 6 total site years. Weren't able to execute this protocol in 2020, but hope to again resume in 2021. We've also had several small plot trials. And termination timing and termination method were the two main objectives we were trying to tackle here. As you can see, this is actually on road frontage trial in the bottom photo. You can see the different termination timings. The different shades of green are actually going to be where we used a roller crimper versus no roller crimper versus an herbicide. So we got lots of different treatments going out. We plant with a production planter in these and collect yield data. The upper right panel is going to be small plot research. So we actually conduct on our research farms. We've got a couple here in West Tennessee. I want to very briefly touch on some of this data. Some of these images were actually collected from Matt Griggs' farm. We've got that strip termination in the upper left panel. That's going to be you strip, terminate where the seed will be placed approximately 6 weeks prior to planting. I do want to point out when we broadcast terminate 6 weeks prior to plant, we almost eliminate the residue in the system. And this is going to be a big concern for us. We're not going to be able to capture many of the benefits of that cover crop if we terminate too early. We've fairly commonly settled on terminating that cover crop 3 weeks prior to plant. For those that are not willing to commit the time to do the strip termination, this seems to be the easiest, alleviate some uncertainty associated with planting green. And then we also look at planting green. A couple of measurements that we collect, and I want to look at the bottom left panel. I've got a number of plants with 2 leaves here on the y-axis. What basically you can consider this to be is relative maturity. The greater the number, the further along those seedlings might be. If you see low numbers, that would be a delay in maturity. Basically, when this cotton plant comes up, if the soil has warmed up, it will move from that first to second true leaf very quickly. If it's cool or stressed, it may hang in that cotyledon stage or take some time to move from cotyledon to first true leaf. You can clearly see a benefit of terminating very, very early on early season seedling vigor in that second bar, considerably more plants with 2 true leaves. We don't see much difference between the 3-week and the strip termination. The right side of that figure, you can see the gray bars. We've actually got a mechanical termination. That's just going to be the roller crimper. We've got a chemical termination. That's going to be that second bar. And we've got the mechanical plus chemical. What I want to point out here is the mechanical for us, if we come in early, and I think Matt Griggs would say he's observed the same thing. If we come in too early, we simply cannot terminate the cover crop with a roller crimper alone. We've got to really delay that roller crimper application or that activity if we want to achieve a greater than 95% termination with a roller crimper. Otherwise, we've got to include an herbicide with that termination kill. From a weed pressure standpoint, we consistently see higher weed pressure when we terminate the cover crop early. So this really becomes a balance of trying to not negatively impact early season cotton vigor and capture the benefits on the front end of having high biomass cover crop in the system. We have also had some of the same experiences that Matt Griggs has had on trying to establish into high biomass cover crop. I have walked many fields in the past several years where producers set the planter early in a cover crop scenario and did not continuously monitor seedling depth. We come back, that second panel, that second figure, this is one of the very, very upsetting thing to see. Cotton seed strode on the top of the ground. You got to understand, we're trying to place cotton seed at about ½ an inch. And this system inherently has variable biomass levels across the field. If you set the planter, even if you set it perfectly well, you've got 5 different species of cover crop, typically in a mix. Those gauge wheels will ride up and down across this variable level of biomass and pick up that seed and occasionally lay it on the ground. We see a lot of kickouts, and occasionally we get seeds too deep. The problem is, you might think, well, I'll run an aggressive row cleaner. The problem is binding. We've got a very short window of time that we've got to get this cover crop. We've got to get the cotton established into a cover crop. We do not have time to step off of the tractor and clean row cleaners. This is a tremendously time-consuming activity. We've got to be able to adequately address, move that heavy biomass away from the furrow, allow the gauge wheels to ride on a consistent seed bed if we're going to be able to achieve adequate seed depth and seed-to-soil contact. I won't spend much time on the left panel for sake of time, but I do want to point out on the right side of this slide Matt indicated that he does not believe that a no coulter system works, and we have had the same observations. What you see here in this left image on the right side of the slide, you can't really even tell where the planter ran. This would represent a no row cleaner setup on our test planter. On the right, this actually represents that razor coulter, that razor wheel with a lead coulter that Matt also indicated works well. You can see that this system moved the residue away from that furrow and allows those gauge wheels to ride on a much more consistent seed bed. This is, in my opinion, the way forward. Now, I want to take a step back away from cotton production. A few have been able to make this no row cleaner system work in corn and soy. And I think the reasons for that, they don't have to be as precise as we do on seed depth. They can plunge it a little deeper than we can. In cotton production, we don't have that luxury. We have got to address residue on the soil surface. I will say here as an aside, we've had better luck generating better furrow ratings when we've terminated early, whether that be a strip termination or whether we apply a broadcast application 2 to 3 weeks prior to plant. Crispy residue typically processes better for us in these row cleaner attachments than green. But again, that observation, it varies. I've had a few growers share with me that they feel that they can process green residue better. Our data wouldn't suggest that, but there is obviously some variance from location to location. Our preliminary results, and these are the results that we typically share at our production meetings when asked about cover crop production. We think the strip terminate, what Matt's been able to pioneer here is excellent. That is the preferred method. That allows us to keep a tremendous amount of green residue in the system into the growing season. Allows us to really reap some of the benefits that we would not be able to get if we terminated early. If you do not have that setup or it does not work for your farm, we recommend to terminate 2 to 3 weeks prior. We do recommend to increase seeding rate and avoid small seeded varieties. As an industry, we have seen a shift into some smaller seeded varieties in excess, in some areas in excess of 6,000 seed per pound. So this is a real concern for us in the cover crop system. From a planter attachment standpoint, number one, you've got to be monitoring seed depth, seed to soil contact continuously. As moisture conditions change throughout the day, planter setup has to change. These razor locking row cleaners show a tremendous amount of promise, and we have looked at altered double disc openers. We've not really seen a benefit. As Matt said, properly address the residue in front of the planter, and the rest will typically take care of itself. I will add, our standard no-till finger wheel setup does not work very well for us in West Tennessee. Those systems typically bind and are very, very difficult to make work in a heavy biomass system. Our outreach, I mentioned this earlier, we're sharing this data through field days locally, county regional extension meetings. Again, I mentioned had the opportunity and continue to participate in the NRCS coffee and conversations, for lack of a better term, that both Brad and Matthew Denton have organized. And we've also shared some of this data at national meetings. I've got a PhD student that's now leading the project and presents on this annually at the Beltwide Cotton Conferences. In closing, I will say we've got a few guys that have figured it out. And when we can get through this window, this challenging window at planning, the benefits are clear. And I think this is definitely the way forward for us in Tennessee. The ability to increase water infiltration, water holding capacity, and reduce our reliance on post-herbicides. The benefits greatly outweigh the risks, but we've got to make sure that when guys begin to enter this system, their experiences, they have a good idea of where to start and maximize the likelihood of success. And that's really where we have been trying to fit into this system.
Good deal. It's amazing listening to Matt talk about his experiences with this, how closely they parallel ours. And I actually stole his row cleaner idea. That was pretty ingenious, and it worked great. And I'm fixing to steal his strip kill this year. So anyway, I'm admitting it, so you can't come after me, Matt. But my brother and I are fourth generation. That number's actually gone down again. We farm about 7,600 acres now. We're actively removing ground from our farm because volume and slim margins doesn't drive our system anymore. We ideally want to get down to about half of where we are now and be able to make a living on that, which is definitely possible with what we can do with this system. But we started in 2010 with cover crops for the same reason Matt did, pigweeds. Those things were just devastating us. We had to figure out how to control them without chemicals because chemicals were putting us in the poorhouse, and they were increasingly becoming less effective. So we found a guy on YouTube, and that was our first resource, and we just went from there. But since that time, our cotton yields have remained competitive for our area, but we're doing it with about half the money that it once took. So just a little bit about me. I got a degree in botany at Arkansas State and then a master's in entomology at the University of Arkansas. So I look at farming a lot different than a lot of my counterparts. I pick things apart pretty scientifically, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. It frustrates my brother quite a bit sometimes. But anyway, when you're going through this, what I've learned is the whole system, the sum of the whole system is greater than any of its individual parts. So cover crops by themselves, if you're tilling and planting cover crops, you're not going to get there. If you're no-tilling without cover crops, you're not going to get there. If you're, there's so many pieces to it. When you add them all up, it's just game changing. But the first thing you have to do is plant a cover crop. We're just like Matt. We plant right behind the combine. If we're on top of our game, we're actually pushing the combine through the field with our drills. So that's the number one key. And we're running about $15 to $20 an acre. We've gone through all of the systems of 5, 6, 7-way blends, and now we're down to 2 or 3, and we have not seen a lot of differences in in the end result, the yields or whatever, or ease of planting or anything. But we've reduced our cost there just from fewer species. But we spend that $15 to $20 an acre. But when you compare that to what we used to do with fall tillage and fall herbicides, and then winter burn down and the spring tillage because all your beds washed away, it's a huge money saver. So ideally, we want to look like this at this time of year. We furrow irrigate here, so that's what you're seeing there. But if we can look like this right now, we're doing good. And then just like at Matt's place, we want to look like this come planting time. Last week of April, first week of May, when we're ready to plant cotton, we want to be wooled over, as they say. So the cover crop, it's been hit twice already, but weed control, you can't describe the difference in a tilled system here versus this system as far as weed control goes. It's not bulletproof. We still rely on herbicides, but it's allowed us to do some things that we would never have dreamed of doing in the past. And then the moisture retention. Our irrigation bills have been cut, 50 to 70%, depending on how much rain we get. I mean, we watered cotton once last year. We didn't have any cotton this year because of the wet spring, but, one time for a cotton irrigation is, as opposed to 5 or 6 or more, that's a huge reduction. And then we've been able to reduce our fertility significantly. Same trend Matt's seeing, less nitrogen, no P or K. We're just able to cut things. We don't need them. So last year when we grew cotton, we planted 20,000 seeds on a 76-inch pattern. So we grow 1 in 1 skip. And there's those row cleaners I stole there. But anyway, on this planter, it's a V-set, so we just turn half the rows off and leave half the rows on. So, on that pass there, we were at 20,000 seeds per acre. And with the base price, or with the price of the bag at $5.85, we saved $50 an acre on seed. Well, with this strip kill that Matt's got going, and what we can do with banding and hooded sprayers, we're going to go to non-GMO cotton. And as far as seeding rate goes, we found that if you can get planted early, in that late April, 1st of May time frame, you can get by with a lot less seed. About 12,000 an acre on a 76-inch pattern is, about 1 per foot. So that's plenty of seed. And then we treat it ourselves. We try to buy black seed with no treatment. If you buy traded stuff, you're going to have to get the base fungicide, but we try not to get anything on it if we can. So, as far as placement, we're moving the residue, we're cutting through, and we're getting them in the ground. But it's the same setup that you've seen twice already today, the row cleaners that don't wrap and good sharp disc openers. And then this is the stand that we got last year. And like I said, that's 20,000 seeds on 76 inches. Look how close together they are. That's way too many seed crammed together there. But they all came up. But it's just way too thick. So that's why we're reducing our stands, or our planting numbers going forward. But once it started growing, it took off, and you can see how clean it is. I mean, we only had a couple of passes over the top with Liberty and Dual was our entire weed control program, other than killing the cover crop. And it just stayed clean all year. We just didn't have any trouble. There it is, midway through, still clean. And there it is, at cutout. It had almost lapped the middles on 76-inch spacing. So cotton, if you give it time and space, it can do a lot for you. You can get a lot more out of one seed than you think you can. So, as far as reducing inputs, seed is a good one, especially if you're growing traded varieties. So just like Matt, we're seeing a reduction in the need for nitrogen. Last year we used 300 pounds of AMS. We threw that out a month to 3 weeks prior to planting, and we never came back with anything else. And we had to use so much growth regulator, I think we had a severe excess nitrate problem. So I think we ended up with 1.75 gallons of PICS on those plants. And, they were short and fat, which is what we wanted, but that's a lot of PICS. We hadn't used any P and K on the farm since 16. And we do use Infura, but it's mostly just, stuff to feed soil microbes, just to kind of get them boosted off whenever we're planting. So pretty cheap. But this is what we're seeing in our, we're using sap testing instead of tissue testing, but we're seeing the same kind of stuff that Matt is. I mean, the soil tests on on the left over there, and then our sap tests on the right. I mean, you can see how high the NH4 level is there, and this was mid-bloom, so we hadn't had any fertilizer on this for, a couple months. And then the phosphorus, sulfur, the potassium, everything's just, in plenty good range, with nothing added. So, big savings there also. But, the cover crops have led to enhanced soil structure and life in the soil. And that's, we're getting rooting depths in excess of 30 inches on our cotton. The earthworm populations have exploded, and those things cycle a bunch of nutrients. You could do the math on it, but I think 1 million earthworms per acre can cycle 3 pounds of N, 3 pounds of phosphorus, and 5 pounds of potassium a day. So it doesn't take a lot of earthworms to get 1 million in an acre. I think that's like, I don't know, probably 15 per square foot or something. And we're, consistently between 10 and 15. So, that's where a lot of that stuff's coming from, not counting the microbial populations. But again, weed control just wasn't a problem all year. And it's just all because of the cover crops. I mean, we're at ground zero. Well, I say ground zero. It feels like it with the pigweed pressure. We're resistant to every mode out there, seems like, except for Gramoxone and Liberty. But with this matter residue, we're just able to hold them back. But this was our program for the year. So we had the quart of glyphosate followed by Gramoxone and Diuron at planting, and then 2 shots of Liberty and Dual. And we were clean all year. So it's just cheap. I mean, it just brings so much value. It's hard to imagine anybody not wanting to farm this way. But on the insect deal, I've actually seen the opposite of what a lot of our extension people and people are seeing. I don't know that they're finding increased problems with insects, and I don't know why that is. I'm seeing the exact opposite of that. I mean, if you look at the state average there of sprays versus what we did, this is a trend we see every single year. We're just not seeing the pest problems that like people claim to be seeing. I don't know. I don't understand why I'm not. Maybe I'm just lucky, but this is year in and year out. This isn't a one-off. So, but this is what we see. I mean, you can go out there anytime you want and find something eating a plant bug. They're heavily predated and parasitized. So if you don't spray a bunch of insecticide and let Mother Nature do what she does, then she'll take care of it for you in most cases that I've seen. I mean, there's something out there that eats any pest that you have. Slugs, everybody talks about slugs around here. Well, if you've got a healthy tiger beetle population, you're not going to have slugs. And the only way you can get that is by not carpet bombing with insecticide and tilling. It just takes time, but once it's there, it's there. So we're not seeing the increase in insect pests. Again, we've reduced our irrigation by half just because of evaporation and better infiltration. I don't know how long it'll be before we can just cut our wells off. I hope we get there one day, but we're getting close with as much rain as we've been getting here lately. But this little video here is huge for just demonstrating. I mean, I was going to see if I needed to spin the pivot, so I pulled the residue back and the ground was wet. and then I take about 10 steps, and you'll see why I was wondering about spinning the pivot, because that turn row was just gunpowder. So, you know, the only difference there was 10 steps and about 2 inches of cover crop residue. And wide row cotton, it will make. It just needs time. Planting early is the biggest key. So that's 76-inch cotton ready for harvest. So this is the only way we grow cotton now. We don't grow on 38s anymore. In my mind, there's no reason for us to do that. It's just increased cost, and we don't gain anything on yield with the extra rows in there. So this is kind of our cost. That field I just showed you, planted May 28th, it made right at 1,100 pounds, and we sold it for 74 cents a pound. So, you know, with the inputs we had, it totaling $183 just direct inputs, and what we got off the cotton at 812. I mean, there was a huge margin there. So, you know, you can make a living growing cotton. You just can't listen to salesmen. So the last part, and I think the biggest reason I'm here talking today is the addition of the livestock. We've added livestock to this rotation, mainly for the soil health piece, but it's also given us a good, you know, return on investment. So over the years we've done it, we've averaged about a $500 a head buy price and about a $950 per head sale price. So, you know, we're averaging $450 a head for every cow we buy. So where does that fit in? Well, the first thing I always hear is, are you buying stockers or cow calf? Or I don't know what any of that means. I'm not a cow guy. So when they ask me that, I really don't know what they're talking about. I just go buy the junkiest, cheapest, sorriest cows I can find for the least money, hope they don't die, and bring them home, and then try to sell them for good money in the spring. So income, and then of course what they do for the soil with their manure and urine and saliva, and the act of feeding on the plants produces a bunch of exudates that just really spur microbiology, and then they're just fun to deal with. They're just big dogs. But some concerns that we had were, you know, fencing and watering. You know, do they need minerals? What do we have to have facilities to work them? You know, what's it going to do to our insurance? Are we going to make any money? Is it going to be a big time-consuming deal? And we figured out that all these things are pretty simple. You know, the fencing deal, we can put up 20 acres of fence from about 8 in the morning to about 11 in the morning, and then go eat lunch and come back and do another 20. We just got us a little post driver here, and I get to sit in the air conditioner and do this. And I get my helpers to reload the post driver at the next spot. And then we just string high tensile wire. It doesn't take long at all. It's really simple. You know, watering. We just converted an old nurse trailer. We had it spray foamed with the closed cell insulation so it wouldn't freeze in the winter, and built a trough out of a piece of U channel off an old granary, and put a toilet bowl floater on it to keep it full. So you don't have to have anything fancy. And then those are our mineral feeders on the side. We do provide free choice mineral, but you know, those fancy ones at Tractor Supply about $150, and I'll sell you as many as you want. I've got a pile of barrels out there. I'll cut a hole in the side and I'll sell them to you at a discount, $75. Okay, this is a critical step. If you're going to integrate cattle, the best time to buy cows is in the heat of the summer, like August, September. And we did not do this year, thinking we were going to be able to establish some winter cover early enough to get them going. But we figured out this is a integral piece. So you need to plant some summer forage on a dry land piece or whatever you think you need to sustain the amount of cows that you are going to buy, and have a place to stage them until your winter cover behind your cash crop's big enough to graze. Otherwise, you're going to be left with no forage and nowhere to put cows. So basically what we'll do is we'll plant a crop of winter wheat, and then after we pull the winter wheat off, we'll plant this cow-chow mix, which is, a bunch of Sudan, sun hemp, peas, just a whole mix of summer species, millet. We just put as much stuff in there as we can because I don't know what they like and they don't like. I just put it all together. And I know if I went to a buffet and all they had was mashed potatoes, I'd be mad. So we just put everything in there. But this is a critical piece. And then to get your winter forage established early, we interseed the wide rows with the cover, just broadcast it, and then let it be coming, and we'll just pick the cotton, and then the cover will be there, and then here we go. So, we do stuff that we can do with a spinner cart, black oats or cereal rye and radish, just it'll usually get rained down in the residue and it comes up fine, but that's how we get going early. It's in the cotton, and then behind corn you can plant with a drill early enough you can get a good deal going there. So those are your two best options as far as grazing, at least on our place. So, but this is what we're looking for when we're going for cows. These beauties right here. That's the kind of quality we're looking for when we're out buying cows. So you could take an animal that looks like that, like any of them. That's number 7 right there that I'm highlighting that year. That was our first year. And we had to coax them off the truck with a little sweet feed. It didn't take much because they were pretty hungry. But number 7 there. You can take animals that look like that and put them in this. And we turned 40 of them out in there. I can see about 3, I think. And then graze them on winter cover. And this first year when we put them in this, we got pretty nervous. We didn't know how many cows we had left, if they'd busted through the fence or what, because we couldn't see them for about the first month they were out there. So we went to Walmart and got us a drone so we could count our cows. And we bought one of those little cheap ones, cheapest thing we could find. It was a little bitty thing. In this first round of pictures here, we were up close to a tree line, and a hawk came out of the tree line and smashed our drone. We had to call a guy with a bigger one that, that's, you gotta have one big enough that intimidates birds of prey, I guess is the tip there. But that was a real good way to count those cows. But you could take those cows rough looking. There's number 7. Look how much better she looks. We had a lot here off to the side that we put them on when we had a big bad wet spell, but grazing them on cover crops and a little bit of cotton gin trash when you got to put them in a lot to get them off your field when it's wet, you can rehab a cow and make them look really good, really fast. So there they are again. This was when we moved them back off of the feed lot back out in the fields, and we were getting ready to move them. They'd already grazed this paddock off, and we were getting ready to move them to the next one. They were ready to move. They're once they figure the routine out, they're really easy to handle. They'll be waiting on you at the gate when they know it's time to move. So, they've been really, really easy to deal with and fun to deal with. And we're trying to expand every year. And like I said, this year we didn't plant our cow-chow. We just thought we could get away without it, but we figured out that that's not possible. So that's kind of how we roll through the system. Then when we do paddock graze them, we'll vary the paddocks by, forage size, how much do we want to take off, if it's wet or if it's dry. We So that'll vary, but it can go from 1 acre to 10 depending on conditions. So it's just been a good deal for us. But I figured out in my short career that things that's always been done because that's the way they've been done, that doesn't mean anything. For us, it would have meant going broke. So, we're always looking to do something different that's going to save money or make money. And so far, this soil health journey has been a money maker. So that's all I've got.
And we had a question earlier about the presentations, the PowerPoints being provided, and we can certainly provide those, and we'll do that as soon as we possibly can. We addressed that. Okay, Matt, I believe this was a question for you. How effective is the roller crimper at termination? Dr. Raper, I think you can comment on this as well, but this was during Matt's part of the presentation. How effective is the roller crimper at termination?
Thanks, Matthew. I'd agree wholeheartedly with what Dr. Raper was saying in his presentation. My presentation was dealing strictly with cotton, and by the time we plant cotton in early to the middle of May, the cover crops have gained sufficient biomass to be terminated relatively easy with a roller crimper. Obviously, if we're talking about planting cotton in April or dealing with corn and soybeans planted in the cover crop in April, a roller crimper is not nearly as effective. For a roller crimper to be effective, you do need to have sufficient biomass. A roller crimper does not work well with a thin stand of cover crop. It works a lot better with a thick stand of cover crop, and then the cover crop has to be mature enough to be able to have a nice crisp stem that can be crushed. With cereal rye, you need to at least have that seed head popped out. And then, of course, there's some species that a roller crimper just won't effectively control. Annual ryegrass is one of them. It'll lay it down on the ground, but a roller crimper will not terminate annual ryegrass. And annual ryegrass is a very key component of our mix. It's considered a super crop and just has tremendous benefits in the soil with its rooting structure. So we also have to include a herbicide to control the annual ryegrass. Your vetches, your winter peas, I'd say a roller crimper, if the cover crop is mature enough, is probably about 80 to 90% effective on viney species like that. Crimson clover, it works well on. Oats and wheat, it works well on. It's mainly annual ryegrass that it doesn't work well on. But those species where it does work, again, it needs to be mature enough to where the roller crimper can actually crush the stem and lay it down. Otherwise, the cover crop won't die, and it does have a tendency to spring back up, especially if you have a thin stand.
Okay. And Adam, you're using not a roller crimper, but you're using another tool. Would you?
Yeah, well, we're applying the chemical to kill ours, and then we're laying it flat with just an old flat roller, that we used to use in our rice fields, back when we were full tillage and needed to pack some dusty soil back down. So just a big flat roller is what we got.
Okay. Matt, this question came in during your presentation. Are acres irrigated where you green plant?
We do not have any irrigation on our farm, as Dr. Raper suggested. Irrigation is not all that common here in West Tennessee. Our average field size is probably 20, 25 acres, and it's just not economically feasible for us to irrigate. So that's a big reason why we've turned to soil health and the cover crops. On average, we get about 52 inches of rainfall per year, which is sufficient to grow any crop. We just don't always get it at the right time. So we're trying to build our soils up to capture all the rainfall that Mother Nature will give us and store it into the soil until the time it's needed.
All right. There was a question about where can my farmer buy non-GMO cotton. I think Dr. Raper has answered that in the chat if anybody's interested in that. Gordon Michael, hello Gordon. Gordon asked, how can you furrow irrigate, this is for you Adam, how can you furrow irrigate with all that residue? We don't have that here, but I have been told furrow irrigation doesn't work with residue.
Oh, it works. We just built a middle with a little thing we built. It's got a double disc opener on it. It's like Perkins makes one similar. We just built our own, put it on our Orthman bars, but we just clear the residue out of our furrow and it'll make it to the bottom. The problem that we've had is we've had to redo all our polypipe configurations because our infiltration rates have gotten so high we can't get water to the bottom of the field sometimes. As much as we pump, it's just going in the ground. So, we'll have places that are irrigated and beautiful, and then down at the bottom, you can see where the water just quit. It just played out. So we've had to, redesign our irrigation with bigger holes and more volume per row to get to the bottom of the field in a lot of cases. So, but yeah, you can definitely furrow irrigate in a full cover crop system. We've been doing it for several years. It's infiltration rate's been a bigger deal to us than the residue blocking the row.
Okay. This is another question for you, Adam. Is your seeding rate 20,000 seed per row acre or per field acre?
So on that wide row cotton, everything I talk about is field. I don't do anything on row acre. So that yield was field acre and that seeding rate was field acre. It's 20,000 seeds per field acre. If that had been spread across 38-inch rows, it wouldn't have looked near as thick, but it was definitely way too much seed on a 76-inch row. But yeah, it was field acre.
Thank you, Adam. Another question for you, Adam. Are you moving your cattle based on cover crop plant height? First question. Second part, how much do you leave? Do you try and graze early and then move them off to allow for more growth prior to termination? So 3 questions there.
Yeah, so, we try to take half and leave half because the plants rebound so much better. In the depth of winter when things are growing slow, sometimes you got to take a little more than you want. But when things start kicking there in late February and March, we can move them around a lot faster and stay in bigger forage. And then what was the last part of that question, Matt?
It's, do you try and graze early and move them off to allow more growth prior to termination?
Oh, yeah. Well, we try to sell them about a month before we think we're going to plant cotton just so everything can get growing. We don't graze right up to the time we plant. We try to get them gone 1st of April. Let them be somebody else's problem at that point. And that's generally when buyers are looking for cows because their grass is starting to grow and they're not having to feed hay anymore. So it just kind of works out where that's when people want them. So we're more than happy to move them on at that point.
Another question, Adam, were any cotton picker head modifications needed for the 76-inch cotton?
No, nothing needed to change. Well, we made some modifications. I'll tell you, let me reword that. Yes, some things were needed to happen. We needed the high capacity doors because that plant was so big and had so much cotton on it. It didn't matter what speed you went unless you were like 2 miles an hour. There was so much cotton falling in, the air couldn't keep up. We had the bigger fan upgrade and we took all the air out of the other units and combined them all to the picking units. But we needed the high capacity doors. Otherwise we were just constantly choking up. And then the other thing that we're doing this winter is actually taking the dead units off and spreading out. So we're going to have 4 rows picking at 76 inches instead of the 3 that we had last year. So we're going to actually extend the toolbar on the front and have some drive shafts made and have a 4-row 76-inch picker. So we'll gain some picker efficiency with that. But if you're going to grow that big, a plant that big, you need to have those bigger doors.
Next question for you, Adam. Are there any issues with livestock withholding periods after applying some of the chemicals used on cotton?
I don't guess. By the time they get there, the cotton's long gone. So I don't know what any of those would be. The last thing to be applied would be defoliant, and by the time the cows get there, the leaves are already rotted and gone. So I guess not. I can't think of anything.
I have a question for you, Adam, as well. I noticed that you showed that you were getting started early with overseeding into the cotton, the cover crop. Are you seeing any damage from any of your defoliant applications by using that early start method?
No. Sometimes if we use Diuron or something, it'll spec some stuff up, or AIM will spec some stuff up pretty good, but nothing that it doesn't rebound from pretty quickly. It's not like desiccating beans with Gramoxone or something. It just doesn't have the same effect on the grass, especially. You rarely see anything on the oats or anything.
All right, another question. What is the seeding depth to allow for cover crop residue? I'm assuming as she's talking about when planting the cotton, what is your seeding depth to allow for the cover crop residue? I guess this is a question for all 3 panelists. What depth are you shooting for, Matt Griggs?
Well, as Dr. Raper showed in his slide presentation, the standard planting depth for cotton is a 1/2 inch because it just doesn't have a whole lot of energy to push through the ground, and any kind of soil crusting can really hurt it. But if you think about the geometry design of a planter, the shallower you go with your planting depth, the narrower the seed trench is. And you can have a lot more interference of the cover crop with the seed falling into the seed trench. So the deeper you go, the wider the seed trench is, and it's got more of an area to fall into. So for me, planting at a 1/2 inch deep in the thick cover crop residue, there's a whole lot of risk to it. You do have some seeds that don't make it into the ground. So I try to shoot for about 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch deep. Because the soil structure is so good, I don't have to worry about the rain compacting the ground and packing the seed in or crusting over. As long as I got warm conditions, even at an inch deep, cotton generally comes up just fine.
Okay, Dr. Raper, you want to add anything?
A perfect answer. I mean, that's it. The issue becomes you set for that 3/4 to inch. With an understanding you've got a certain level of biomass, and when that biomass level changes, if you haven't properly addressed it with the row planter setups that Matt shared, that's when you can drive that seed a little bit too deep, and then that little seedling will become exfoliated, and that's where you really get into there's only so much energy stored in that little seed, and that's why we encourage that, try to find a larger seeded variety. Steer away from some of what are known to be lower vigor varieties. But yeah, great answer. No additional comments there.
Adam, anything different from your perspective?
No, that's what we shoot for too, about an inch. It's right on the money.
All right, folks, that's the questions that I see in the chat. I hope I haven't overlooked anyone. The presenters' contact information is on your screen. They've all agreed that if anybody wants to contact them, that certainly do so. The presentations that you saw today will be made available via this team string. And any other questions or comments? Seeing some praises come in through the chat. All right, I'm gonna just transition very quickly here to our final slide and just say a couple of words. And again, thank you to all the participants today. Thank you to our panelists, especially. I thought it was a great presentation, and I really appreciate you being a part of it. With anything that any endeavors that we follow through on, we have to have a plan. We have to have the support of our leadership from an agency perspective. I know all the states, the folks that are from the states on the call have excellent leadership, but I just want to take a quick opportunity to recognize my state conservationist, Mr. Sheldon Hightower, and want to highlight his continued support of soil health and its importance in Tennessee. And I think that's evident with some of the results that we've seen today in the various slides. So on the screen now, I hope you're seeing the contact information for the Soil Health Division contacts that work in this region. And those gentlemen were on the call today as well. So please reach out to them if you have any questions or need any follow-up information. They're certainly available to assist.